Hey guys, welcome back. Here's where we're at. It's, we're in Utah. It's a Saturday. It's raining in Utah, which hasn't been happening a lot much lately, so that's a good thing because, man, oh man, do we need some water around here or we're going to be like California and Arizona. We're going to be burning up all summer. I've been kind of organizing a little bit. I cleaned the bench off a little and I was going through my box of spark plug wires and I found a couple more stickers in here for my MSD spark plug wires. If you've been watching many of these, I think I've mentioned on several occasions that everything I buy from vendors, I wind up getting a bunch of stickers from. I have a drawer in the toolbox over there where I'm just throwing them all in there. And I'm getting close to the point where I think I could pretty much wallpaper this thing in stickers and not have to paint it. So we'll see. I'll be reaching out to these various suppliers and see if they want to talk about a sponsorship deal. If not, then the stickers might live in the drawer and we'll paint the Jeep. Anyway, I'm pretty stoked about today because it was a rough week. It was just busy as all get out and I didn't get a chance to really do anything on this thing, so I've been kind of itching to get some work done. And second of all, I don't think I'm going to have to drill any great big gnarly holes in this tub like I did last week, so that's a good thing. Third of all, I don't think I have any rusty old parts that need to be sanded down and painted up, so I'm not going to have to be dealing with any of that nasty old black Rust-Oleum paint that won't dry in a reasonable amount of time and sometimes has a tendency to turn into orange peel on your stuff. So all of those things I don't have to deal with this week, so I'm pretty excited about getting some stuff done here. I did spring for a new wiring harness because the old one had been chopped up just a little bit in the kind of process of getting our aftermarket electric fans hooked up and some lights in the front of the Jeep. There was a couple of other relays in there that I don't really know what they were there for. I just decided, since the theme here is let's just do it once and do it right and do it like we're building a brand new Jeep, there was no sense trying to cobble together that old stuff, and it's only money, right? So I bought a new harness, so we're gonna bust that out. If you're familiar with how that works, there's a square hole over in the far left side of the firewall. There's the part that comes in from the engine side, the part that comes in from the dashboard side. They screw together and kind of lock in place in that hole. So I'm going to put that in, and then we'll switch over our attention to the engine side of the firewall, and we should be able to start routing that wiring harness along with the wiring harness for fuel injection, along with the fuel supply lines up to our fuel pressure regulator and so forth. And we ought to be able to get all of that laid out like a magnificent work of art. And then that will be all ready to be closed up and we can start to put the fenders back on and the hood on, which will give me some more room in the garage because I'm moving the hood around every time I move. And then to carry that theme on a little bit further, that will get us at the point where we'll be able to turn our attention to the dashboard. Now we are getting real if we're starting to talk about putting the dashboard back in here. And here's the deal. I have the original dashboard out in the Jeep graveyard. I have a brand new dashboard that came with the tub over in that corner of the garage. So I got two of them that are in pretty good shape. I think I'll be able to kind of look at them and go, all right, well, this one is, I'm going to keep this one in place. It's already got a lot of the gauges in it, or I'm going to move the gauges over to the new one. Just, we get to use whichever one we like the best. So lots to do, and I think it's time to just for me to shut up and get working on it. So let's go. Well, it's been a little while since we've opened a box, but I did get this stuff in from Summit Racing. I bought the Painless Wiring Harness for the Jeep, and I bought a painless wiring ground strap. This goes between the block and the frame to ground the engine. So let's open this thing up. Before we begin, we better read this thing. I did notice, I dropped it on the floor there, but there was a little sample in here of Painless Wiring's new, or maybe it's not new, but they call it Power Braid. And it's wire loom, but it's braided and it just wraps around the wire. Looked like really good stuff. So basically we've got our kind of our hot wire here, a big chunk of heavy duty wire for the hot side of the battery. And then the two big spools of wire, one goes in the engine compartment, one goes in behind the dash, and then there's a littler spool that runs to the back to run the back tail lights. So this is the inside of the one. And then they include, you know, connectors and various little attachment points that you're going to need. Of course, a sticker or two and the alternator parts. So overall, yeah, this is a pretty good kit. Comes with some other stickers you can put on stuff. But here's the important thing, I think, is look at the size of the owner's manual that comes with this thing. Now, this is just a wiring harness, but this thing is huge. And it's got diagrams and instructions, and trust me, these guys have got it figured out. You cannot go wrong as long as you follow the instructions. All right, well, a couple things to note about the painless wiring thing. So first of all, I did have to drill a couple more holes. When I was drilling, so what I did is I set the fuse panel up in there. I went in through the hole with a bit that was as close to the hole size as I could get, and I just spun it a little bit to kind of make my divot in the metal. Then I pulled the fuse panel out. Then I drilled a smaller pilot hole through the center of that. Now, that said, when I was on the inside coming at it, that park brake bracket that's welded to the side of the tub was a little bit in the way of the drill. Couldn't get it at its straight 90-degree angle to the firewall, so I was drilling a little offset. I don't know what else to do about that, except maybe what I should have done is just stopped with my tiny little pilot hole and then come and done the rest of the drilling from the firewall side or the engine side here. So I don't know if I filmed it, but I had to take, I think I said I was, whatever size I said I was with that hole, I had to go up a couple 64ths on this other hole just to make it a little bit bigger, so I had a little room to kind of get that bolt through there because it wasn't lined up exactly right. So that was a little bit of a sticker. Other than that, that went in just fine. So you tighten that down and you saw the bracket or the connector side of this just showing through. There's a foam pad all the way around it, so I tried to make sure I was nice and centered there so that that foam is sealing the hole up. And then the bolt in the center of the thing is a 3/8 inch bolt that puts this firewall side or the engine side into the other side, and you can probably see that bolt's down in there. It's a little tough to get at. So what I wound up doing is I started out with a 3/8 inch drive with a 3/8 inch extender on it. And that was just too thick to fit in there around all those wires. So I got my little 1/4 inch ratchet and a 1/4 inch extension, which is pretty small, and put a 3/8 inch short socket on there so I could get it kind of in through the wires. And then I was able to tighten that up. So let's have a quick look from a distance here. So there we go. Our harness is in on this side, and I've just got it sitting up on the top for now. And then I'm gonna spin you around. We're gonna look inside. So here we are inside. Now, I'll come around the light here. This is the fat side of the harness. Most of this goes up over the bracket here, so I might pull that down because it goes up over here and comes to all your gauge set and all that. And but there it is, and then there's this other little smaller one that's coming out of the bottom of the thing, and that goes down to what used to be in the old days the floor-mounted dimmer switch, which I guess is where we'll put our dimmer switch again. But there we go. The harness is roughly in place. So now I can kind of get started on laying it out up here and figuring out where it's all going to go. So that was that part was pretty easy. Of course, that was the easy starting part. This is the brake warning switch. So I'll have to look at the manual, figure out where that's supposed to go. But it's probably hooks to our master cylinder or something. Anyway, you can see how big the manual is. I think I showed you a bit of that when I was unboxing this thing. And this is a 146 page, something like that, 148 pages of manual. So these guys got it figured out, and it's pretty step by step through all of this. They're showing you how to go over the top of that steering column, etc., etc. There's my mounting of my fuse panel, so you can see I did it with the relays up at the top. So yeah, pretty good manual. I mean, these guys do one thing and they do it well. So there we go. We'll get started on kind of laying this around now and getting her all ready to button up there. Don't get ahead of yourself. What you're supposed to do before you hook this thing in there is you're supposed to put a little bit of this dielectric grease on each of the little contacts in there to seal them up and keep them from getting corroded. So I'm going to now take that off and put that on there. As it turns out, this is page about 84 in the manual, hooking this chunk in. So what they do is they kind of have you put the interior side in, and then you're working in the interior, mostly getting all the gauges and all that hooked up. So I kind of jumped ahead to the point where it says to put this in here. One thing also I'll note, which is irrelevant, it doesn't matter, but in the book, it says that's a Phillips screw inside of there that's pulling this chunk into the bulkhead thing. It's not, it's that 3/8 inch bolt. But yeah, I'm gonna back that thing out of here, pull this off, put a little of the grease on each of those contacts like I'm supposed to. It says you're supposed to keep some for your light connections and all that kind of thing, but this is where it's supposed to go for the most part, is the most important part. So what's the fun of doing a Jeep project if you don't do half of it twice, right? So learn from my mistake, go slow, read the book, put the grease on before you put this thing in there. But yeah, no big deal. I'll just pop that off, grease it up, put it back together, and then continue on here. So I won't bother making you repeat watching me do this while I do the work twice, but I am doing the work over again. All right, well, maybe you can help me decide here which dash I should use. So this is the old one. This is the new one. I'll take a vote, but I vote we'd use the new one. The factory hole for the stereo has been chopped out, and speakers have been ripped out, the bolt's been bent over. The nice thing about it is I do have, I think, pretty good gauges in there, and I believe all my little indicators for wiper, washer, all that stuff that goes in these holes, all these dudes, I think those are all pretty much new, and I'll pop those out and put them in over here. This is that speedometer that I'm talking about replacing with a GPS based speedometer, and then I think those are my oil and temperature gauges. Light switch over there is probably new, looks good. So we'll salvage a lot of stuff out of here and not use the old rusty, bent up, gnarly old stuff. So we don't want any bent up, gnarly old stuff on this new Jeep. So the glove box for this thing is metal, and I'm pretty sure the one that's out there in the graveyard that was on the CJ7 is cardboard. So that's better as long as we've got room for it. It's got to fit up here in this area, so hopefully it'll fit. We'll try it, but there we go. Not too tough a decision to make. Again, you can see how gnarly that thing is and has been over time, and then of course we got rust all over where that top of that cowl was all rusty under the windshield washer or the windshield frame. So there we go, there's the dashes. All right, well, I pulled that big old mammoth glove box out of there. As I suspected, it's too deep to fit in there by far. Lucky thing is they do have captured nuts around it here, so what I might wind up doing is seeing if I can get the dash up there, measure how deep it needs to be, and then slice it off and braze the back end back onto it, because I do like the fact that it's a nice big metal thing. Then let's have a gander at the front of our old dash. So these are our new things. I'm gonna spin you around here, spin this around. So these are a little tough to get out of there because they pinch together here okay, but they gotta go together a little bit on the end. So I'm not really having too much luck getting those out of there yet, but I will continue on with that, see if I can salvage those. These were all the extra switches I had for extra goodies on this thing, which I will not do again. If I do aftermarket switches, I've started following an outfit that makes an electronic switch module. It looks much better. Old CB mount. I don't know if anybody uses CBs anymore. Look at that, an old 24th annual Easter Jeep Safari sticker from 1990. I did not go to the Jeep Safari in 1990, someone else did. And then, of course, didn't I say something about not having any parts to paint today? So after pulling that thing off, this looked just a little rough. So I took some real fine sandpaper, roughed it up a little bit, gave it the acetone treatment, and I've just slapped a little primer on there. Now, that brings me to this kind of interesting part of the process here. The old Jeep is painted the maroon color that the old dash is painted the same maroon as the rest of the Jeep was. So I would think that maybe I want to at least have the dash painted before I put all my gauges and stuff in there. And according to the old Jeep, the dash was the same color as the Jeep, the rest of the Jeep. Now, here's what I'm gonna do. I think I mentioned that Dennis Collins guy who has a shop out in California or Arizona or somewhere, and he specializes in Jeeps. I've watched a couple of his videos where he's going around showing you you know, okay, this model came this way. I'm just going to go watch that for a little while, and I'm going to see if the average Jeep did have the dash match the rest of the Jeep, or was it a color like black or something like that. If it's black, then I'll paint it myself before I put the dash or the gauges and stuff and the switches and all that in. If most of them match the color of the Jeep, then I'm gonna have to stop and ponder this, because theoretically that might tell me that I'm at the point where I should get my body color decided on and at least get some of this painting done before I, you know, bolt the finished products in. But man, that just seems like we're jumping ahead about 6 months. So before we make that jump, let's get some more information under our belt, shall we? So I'm gonna go check that out. I'll give you an update and let you know what I find. Okay guys, well, I have been upstairs doing a little internet research. There's that guy Dennis Collins. I think I've mentioned him before. He does seem to know his Jeeps like, you know, he knows everything about them. And as he was going through doing a little, I was watching a video where he's doing a little shop tour and he's explaining the various models. I was looking, okay, does that one have the same color dash as the rest of the body? Yep. They all do. So obviously I got to paint the dash when I paint the rest of the Jeep, which means obviously my gauges and my switches and all that stuff are not going in the dash until after we're painted. So now I'm gonna have to really start thinking about the paint day. And what that means is there are gonna be a few things that must happen before that can happen. First of all, this won't be drivable when it goes to get painted, because obviously we won't have the dash put together. But the engine's gonna have to be kind of, you know, sealed up. So I've still got my thermostat housing off of it. I've got my oil filler off of it. I've got my oil pump off of it. All those things are gonna have to be put back on so that the engine's closed up while it's running around on the back of a trailer. And then I'm gonna have to rent a trailer, drag it up on there and take it to the paint shop on a trailer. But you know, I think I can still continue on with laying out the wiring that has to go across the firewall here and the fuel line and the fuel pressure regulator and a couple of those things. And then I'm really going to start looking at this with a hard look at what needs to happen next before I go paint this thing. Now, drop me a comment down below. Tell me what color you think I should paint this thing. And while we're talking colors, that Dennis Collins guy was just showing a block that he was painting. And he said that this color of AMC blue that I'm using is not, technically speaking, the perfect color. So if you really are doing a restoration and you want numbers correct and all that stuff, go check that guy's channel out. It sounds like you could go to his website, and he said he found the actual AMC color that the blocks were, and he has it in stock. So you can buy your paint from him. If you like this color, which I like this color, and I'm not obviously building a period perfect restoration Jeep because I got a reproduction tub and reproduction fenders, so it isn't going to be original, but I'm okay with the color of my stuff. I think it looks pretty sharp. I kind of like that slightly metallic look to it, but just know it isn't perfect. And I also don't know, you know, what I'll do about my VIN number and all that stuff, because it's a sticker on the dash there. I think on my old firewall out there, I think there's the plate that was riveted to the thing. I'll go drill those rivets out. I'll be able to bring it in and get it on the firewall here. But yeah, I think we're gonna have to start thinking about what it's gonna take to get this thing into the paint shop, which means we've got to pick our color. So for right now, I'm gonna keep on working on this firewall, but that's what's gonna be rolling around in the back of my noggin. We'll be getting this thing painted. Now that's fun stuff to think about, but anyway, got a little work to do before we get there, but it is now gonna be a milestone that will be approaching sooner rather than later, I think. So let's get back to work. All right, guys, we're kind of perched up above the engine. I'm standing on the front axle here. Here's our painless wiring harness coming out of the fuse block here, and the big bigger bundle of the two is what goes across the firewall here. Some of what's in there is alternator wires, this section which says engine section, and then there is also a coil wire here. So these are just loose for right now. I've got those draped over to the side. I did indeed have an extender for that cable that was coming over to my distributor. So that's this piece right here. You can see from roughly here to here, there was about a 12-inch extension, which is perfect. So that lets me kind of get that connector further back here. The other connector on this was, again, the idle air control, which is right here on the back of the throttle body. So what I've done is I've just used some of the twist ties that came with this thing to kind of rough everything in. So I'm kind of hooked to my bracket here where my grill support goes. A couple of these other lights, there was the underhood light, which is right here. And this little pigtail here is the one that goes down to the reverse switch on the transmission, and I think also the four-wheel drive indicator. So we'll deal with that in a while. This one hanging down here goes to the brake warning switch, and that is down on our brake proportioning valve, whatever it is down there. So that'll go down that direction. Everything else comes across over here. And let's get my loose ones out of the way. You can see here's my big bundle coming across. We lose a couple out of it right here. We have our main ground wire. And then this one is our blower motor for our heater. So that's got to go down about there. And then we have the rest of the loom here, which has in it the starter and air conditioning, which we do not have. But that's what is going to be the rest of that cable. So that's how it's going to kind of go. So what I've done is out of my ProFlow connector, I've got my big one up here. It's not hooked in tight right now, but this is that one that goes to my individual. Let's move these out of the way. You can see this big connector comes out of our control unit, plugs in here, and goes to each of the individual injectors. So there's 8 of those, one at each throttle or each injection port. There's some extra cable with that, and I've got that kind of tied up here. That had our air temperature sensor. And again, when I extended this other one out, we'll have our idle air control goes back in here. This is to the coil, and this will come over here and go to our distributor. So the other 2 wires that are over here are my fuel pump and my, can't remember what that one is. Let's see what it says on there. Battery ground and hot, I think. So this is basically coming out of the fuel injection system. This is powered to the brain. And then the other one coming off of it is power to the fuel pump. And this last one, which I talked about the other day, is going down to my O2 sensor on my header collector, which is roughly down underneath there. These red and black coils here are me bringing up my fuel pump connector from the back. So obviously I've got way more of that I need here, especially because the cable that goes to the fuel pump is quite long. So I have all this slack with that. I could take this connector down and probably hook it up somewhere down around that transfer case plate or whatever. We'll see about that. So again, when you take this stuff out of the box, it looks all intimidating, and then you get it out and start laying it out, and it's really not that bad. Now, what I have, the other chunk of what's coming up here that I've just shoved back through the windshield frame for now is headlights and turn signals and things like the washer motor for the squirting up the water on the windshield and the horn. So those are the ones that will have to be routed down the fender here. So what I'm thinking is, I kind of like how this is laid out. I think what we'll do is we'll figure out what size holders I need to put around that, and we'll probably kind of tie this up like this and bring all these up to match it, and we'll tuck them back in there, back in here nice and neat and straight across. Tie them down over here. We'll come back down around here, bring our starter solenoid down here on the firewall or on the fender where it's supposed to go, and then we'll just deal with our fuel pump. So what I need to do again is I got to figure out what size brackets I need to hold all this stuff, but I think that's how I'm going to lay it out. And then now that I know where that's going to go, then the last thing we got to deal with is fuel, and that's going to go ultimately in here after it comes out of our fuel pressure regulator. And then yeah, so these are my open ports I was talking about earlier. This is where our thermostat's going to go. This is where our oil filler goes. We've got an open one back in the back there. I think that's positive crankcase ventilation valve goes in there, and that's the return line that goes from one of these heater hoses back into there and kind of closes that up. The other one comes up here to the front, and so you got supply and return, PVC valve, heater or air temperature sensor, water temperature, oil, and I think one of these also gets your water temperature. Maybe that's it right there. So maybe that one just gets bolted, closed off. So time to go find me some brackets to mount all this stuff, because I don't have anything that big, but then once I can get it in place I can get rid of all the twisty ties. But that helps us figure out where things are going to go. What I'm thinking I might do with the fuel is I may come up under the frame down there where I have a lot of room and come clear over here to the fender, clear up around and back in, so that I'm as far away from heat sources as I can get, with the exception of the header there. But if I can come up high, maybe come up right below the battery box, up around or something, then I won't have to worry about fuel line getting too hot. Okay, well, it's time to wrap this up. I think we made good progress. I think you will probably share my opinion. I think most people do, that one of the Achilles heels of older Jeeps is always the wiring system. Every time you open the hood of an old Jeep, their wires are hanging and they're not in looms and they're chopped up and melted, and it's a mess. So I do feel like a new wiring harness in a project like this is money well spent. I hope you agree. If you do, let me know. If you don't, let me know why you don't think it is. Also, don't forget to leave me a comment down below with your choice of colors. I'm not saying I'm going to pick your color. I'm just saying I'm interested to hear what most people, what people think might be a good color for, picking out of the palette of either, original Jeep colors, or maybe we'll just go with something crazy and do some, who knows, whatever. I mean, might as well get crazy, right? So anyway, I seriously got to shut up and get this thing in the can. I'll see you next time around. Thanks for watching, man.